I am very proud today to have someone on our podcast who can speak as to the current situation of police brutality and what happens to whistleblowers who cross that line and blow the whistle on misconduct, malfeasance, and criminality in police departments. Raymond Hicks, welcome. You're an author, you have written a book, and I am so delighted to have you in this current situation of police brutality, of retaliation against whistleblowers. Welcome.
Thank you so much. And it's a blessing just to be here. Just want to say again, I love you, Miss Victoria, as well as Miss Jane, as well as Miss Anna. Thank you for affording me the opportunity to be able to voice my opinion in reference to what my family and I have endured for the last 21 years.
I'm
Thank
delighted,
you all so much.
delighted to have you on this podcast. And so let's start with just a few questions. Number one, tell us where you were raised and how you came to be in law enforcement, Raymond.
I was raised in Vero Beach, Florida. Well, I was born in Vero Beach, Florida. I was raised in Guilford, a small town right outside Vero Beach. And of course, what inspired me to go into law enforcement was that it was always chaos in my home, every Friday, Saturday, maybe Sunday, where my father and mother were engaged into a verbal confrontation that led to physical altercation. Sometimes they were stabbing, cutting. Eventually, my mom was shot. And from the age of about 8 or 9 that I can recall, the officers used to pull me away from the scene. And, they used to talk to me about the importance of the handcuff, the gun, the back then it was the blackjack. It had 2 leather straps with the steel at the end. And, they talked to me about, just the importance of just being a law enforcement official, just to calm me down from the situation that I was experiencing in my home. And I always said if I didn't become a professional football player, then I would go into law enforcement to make a difference. I didn't want to become a product of my environment, but I wanted my environment to become a product of who I am.
Very honorable, Raymond, very honorable. And you did. You came into law enforcement. Give us the date and what exactly your first job was in law enforcement.
I first started with the Broward Sheriff Office 11/17/1986. My CCN was 4693 as a detention officer. And I worked in the jail for up until 1996. And I went through the Crossover Academy in Palm Beach, which I went from corrections to law enforcement. And I decided at that particular time that I wanted to see what was going on out in the street because the recidivism rate was continuously growing by a vast number. And a lot of the guys was coming in saying, they was planting drugs and beating them to the ground and taking money. So stemming back from 1990, before I went through the Crossover Academy, they pulled me out of the jail and they actually used me to work in sting operations, or where I worked with the Drug Task Force, OCD, organized crime in the cradle, within 1,000 feet of the school, 3 years in state penitentiary. And of course, I did so well out there, Ms. Jane, that they used me on a regular basis, to work with the Drug Task Force. It was a multi-drug task force venture where there was other agencies that was involved, whether it be Hollywood, the city of Fort Lauderdale, the Broward Sheriff Office, Oakland Park, and some other departments, ma'am.
And my understanding, Raymond, is you had an exemplary record. You were honored as a police officer. You got commendations. You were just great at your job. Is that
Yes,
true?
ma'am. That is absolutely correct. And if I may just share on the screen here, here you can see where it says Deputy of the Month, 1997, Deputy of the Month, 1999. I won the Gold Cross Award where I risked my life doing an armed carjacking where I took a gun from an assailant who was robbing a taxi cab driver. One round went through the roof of the car, and I managed to take the gun from him, and he took a chunk out of the victim's eye. And I got on the phone, I called 911, which was communication. I advised to set up a perimeter, because I was actually in civilian clothing during this time. And my whole thing was to secure that weapon. And of course, they set up a perimeter and they later arrested the young man. And that's when I found out later that it was an armed carjacking and not an armed robbery. The young man got in a taxi over off of Sistrunk here in Fort Lauderdale, and the taxi cab took him to 21st and Oakland Park to an apartment. He went upstairs and retrieved the gun, came back downstairs and made the taxi cab driver get in the passenger seat. I happened to be coming down the street as they was coming down, and when the light was red and the light turned green, the car merged into the fence, and I saw them fighting. So I said, let me just stop and break up the fight. And that's when I discovered that they were wrestling with 357 Magnum. And as I mentioned, one round went through the roof of the car, and the subject took a chunk out of the victim's eye, but I was able to take the weapon. And there was a report that was written that I provided to Mr. Tom Devine as well as Mr. Robert Ward, where it says that when the deputies and everyone arrived on scene, Deputy Hicks was there along with the gun and the victim.
Yes, you, from my understanding, had an incredibly significant career, honorable. You were known as truthful. You were known as, you're no small person, so you were known to be able to get into circumstances and get out in one piece. So tell us what happened that derailed your career. What did you observe that was going on in this police department?
Well, as I mentioned, I kept working with the Drug Task Force, OCD in the cradle, and I'm watching my colleagues plant drugs, take money, beat innocent offenders to the ground. And I told them that it was morally wrong and totally unethical. We used to do a buy bus where we used sometime informants to go into different particular locations, and they would make the transaction with the drug dealers. They come back and give us the information. Of course, the drugs that we were selling, there was actually in a Ziploc package, and there was a serial number on the Ziploc package, and of course, the money was marked. And they would come back and give us that intel, that information. And what we did, we took all the drug dealers off the street, and we posed as undercover sellers. And during this time, I watched my colleague do things that was totally morally, it was totally unethical, morally wrong. And as a result of it, they told me I should mind my own business. I said, what do you mean mind my business? I said, you guys are no different than the one we just put in the paddy wagon. You guys should be going downtown with them as well. You know, at the end of the day, all the drugs and money should be tallied up and placed in a folder with red tape that says evidence. And of course, they never did that. You know, they kept these proceeds and the money and everything else. And at this point, you know, things got really bad for me, you know, because they told me.
Let me stop you there, Raymond, because you said some incredible things. You said some incredible things. Tell us the year that you observed this.
Well, it started back in 1990, Ms. Jane.
Okay, 1990.
Yes, ma'am. That's when I first started.
And when did you see this corruption occur? What year?
It had to have been 1998, 1999, somewhere around up in there.
Okay, and so you had been on the force for a number of years,
yes,
had the stellar record. You were observing this that was being done by people on the Drug Task Force. Now, you were fully aware at this time, because you had, what, 9 years in at this point?
Yes, ma'am.
You were fully aware of the thin blue line. I know you were. So you made the conscious decision, because of the integrity you have, to blow the whistle on corrupt police officers. Is that correct?
That is correct, Ms. Jane.
What made you decide to do that when so many cops and police are so aware of that thin blue line? I mean, I was in law enforcement for 25 years. Very few people have the guts, the courage, and the integrity to go, to cross that thin blue line. Tell us what made you be one of those rare people with integrity that you crossed that line.
Well, you know, I understand that there's a code of silence in law enforcement, the blue code of silence, but in the same token, I stood up to my father when I was 13 years of age. And I told him, listen, you're not going to keep putting your hands on my mother. You know, every time you turn around, you come here Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you're jumping on my mom for no apparent reason. I'm not going to allow you to keep doing that. So, of course, that situation just prompted me to say something about them. And according to the policy, BSO policy and procedure manual 2.2.1 says, report a violation of regulation, employee with knowledge of any employee members of violation of BSO regulation, rules, laws, or ordinance will report the violation to their immediate supervisor of professional compliance as soon as practical. So according to the policy, Ms. Jane, I had a duty responsibility, ma'am, to bring forth any situation that I saw that was.
But Raymond, you were really aware of what happened to whistleblowers previous to you. I'm sure you've heard the name Serpico, you've heard the name of other people. So there had to be a core of strength in you that weren't in anyone else in that department.
Well, one of the things that I believe in, Miss Jane, is that I took on that job with the expectation, ma'am, that I want to make a difference for other people, to inspire them and let them know that it doesn't make a difference where you come from, it's where you're going at in life, and I didn't take on that job to belittle or degrade anybody. And I was definitely not going to stand back and watch these individuals that I work with do things that was morally wrong and totally unethical and not say something about it. If I saw a situation happening, ma'am, I always voiced my opinion. And a lot of times, that's what became my demise, because as my sergeant, his name is James Booker, he spoke with Mr. Robert Ward and Mr. Tom, and he informed them that Raymond Hicks was one of the best,
Mm-hmm.
He said Raymond was one of the best. There was.
And I'm aware of that, Raymond. I'm aware of that. And you were in a job, I believe, that you loved, that you actually loved.
Yes, ma'am. This job did a lot for me, Miss A.
Yes.
My family doesn't do cops, ma'am.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, my mom can tell you that I watched my family get into a physical altercation with cops when I was a young kid. I'm stemming back from like 8 or 9 or 10, 11 years of age, and this is the God of His truth. And I always said then, like, why are they fighting with the police, So to be honest with you, I just felt compelled to say something about it. But a lot of people are reluctant, ma'am, to come forth with situations like this, Miss Jane, and it's because of the repercussion and the retaliation.
But that's what I'm getting at, Raymond. You were aware that there were probably going to be repercussions, but you did it anyhow, didn't you?
Yes, ma'am, because it was the right thing to do.
And you know how many times I've heard that from whistleblowers? It's not the money, it's not anything but the fact that it was the right thing to do. So we know you did a righteous thing. You showed that people were on the take, setting innocent people up. So tell us, what superior did you go to? How many superiors did you go to?
I went to the sergeant, I went to the lieutenant, I went to the captain, I went to internal affairs.
Okay, so you did the right thing. You notified your superiors. And as far as you know, they did nothing except turn it over to the subjects that you had identified as being corrupt.
That is correct.
Okay, so you did the right thing. You turned it over to people who should have done something. Tell us what happened next. What time period elapsed between putting in the complaint and the retaliation?
Well, around 1999 is when I won the Gold Cross Award. And June 15th of 2000, I was told that I couldn't work out on the streets anymore, Miss Jane. They said they was not going to use me anymore. They're going to put me back in the jail. I said, okay, I don't care. That's where I started from anyway. And of course, they put me back in the jail. June 15, 2000, I go to work, and I'm working at the Broward Sheriff Office main jail. And I came home around about maybe 3 o'clock. I was working from 7 to 3. And I normally take a shower when I go to bed, and I lie down and I get up around about maybe 3:30, 4 o'clock. 5 o'clock, I'm in my backyard and I'm working out. So this particular day, I decided that, I was going to go work out with some of my neighbors and in my backyard, because I had a lot of weights in my backyard. And next thing you know, I look across the street and I see either the SWAT team or the drug task force. So I said, well, I said, I wonder what's going on, man. I was telling the young man who I was working out with, I said, that must be the drug task force or the SWAT team. And when they saw me, they all jumped in their cars. They sped down the back street of where I live. And of course, I said, man, let's go to the front of my yard and see what's going on. So when I go to the front of my yard, 60 cops stormed me at gunpoint. And they said, you Raymond Hicks? I said, yeah. I said, yeah, I'm Raymond Hicks. I said, wow, what's the problem? We have a warrant for your arrest. I said, a warrant for who arrest? I said, what did I do? And of course, they had my kids at gunpoint. My oldest daughter, she was 12. My youngest daughter, she was 7. You know, and I'm still asking questions. They go in there, they, rip up the house, and then they tell. My wife had gone to Winn-Dixie, you know, I guess to the grocery store, and one of my kids must have called her and told her. So when she came, you know, she saw this commotion going on, all these police cars, you know, from the Broward Sheriff Office, and she went to patting at her chest, you know, like she having heart palpitations. So Dave Robshaw came to me and says, Ray, we're going to place you on suspension from internal affairs. We're going to place you on suspension depending on the outcome of this case. And he asked me if I had any guns. I said, yeah, I got guns in my house, but they belong to me. They don't belong to the sheriff's department. And he asked me what was my identification. I said, okay, I go in there and get it. They said, no, we're not doing, you ain't got to worry about going there to get it. We'll go get it. So of course, they take me away and put me in the paddy wagon. So when they put me in the paddy wagon, Bernard Brown was the gentleman who actually put me in the paddy wagon. He transported me down to District 5. So when I get to District 5, I'm still asking questions. Why am I here? You know, what warrant do you have? Show me the warrant. They never showed me no warrant, Miss Jane. So of course, I'm still asking questions. So as they booked me in District 5, they later transported me over to the city jail. So when I arrived to the city jail, they placed me in solitary confinement for 24 hours. So I stayed there, but I'm still asking questions and nobody answered my questions. So that next morning, the marshal shows up. So I'm like, why are the marshals here? And the marshal say, Ray, we're here to take you to court. I said, what did I do wrong? I said, you know, I've been asking questions, you know, from everybody, but nobody's telling me anything. What did I do? So of course, they said, we're here to take you to court. So they handcuffed me and shackled me, put me in an unmarked unit, and then they transported me over to the federal court. When I get there, my wife and my mom sitting in the audience, and I'm looking at them, and you know, my mom's telling me, you know, to calm down, and I'm listening to the prosecutor, the DA. So she proffered to the court that when Mr. Hicks is at work, he's in the top 10% of his department, but when he's not at work, he's into other curricular activity. So I'm looking at my mom and wife saying, "What is this woman talking about, man?" You know. And she said that I went to various states to live in 350 kilograms of cocaine that was equivalent to $750 million.
Whoa, whoa. So you had no idea that these allegations were going to be lodged against you at that time. Did you have any idea?
No, ma'am, because they, Miss Jane, you know, Internal Affairs has a fiduciary duty, ma'am, that if a man or woman commit a crime, you have to call them down to Internal Affairs and give a guarantee statement, which is actually recorded. You know, it's audio and video. At no time did they ever call me down there to ask me if I was traveling to any states, if I had any association with any drugs or anything of that nature. They never did any of that. And I said to myself, you know, this is crazy. And that's when
Raymond, were you a drug dealer?
No, ma'am.
So this came from left field. You were absolutely stunned, I assume.
I just literally almost lost it in the courtroom because I'm saying to myself, this doesn't make sense to me. I'm like, how do I go from being a highly decorated officer to a drug dealer and a kingpin? You know, as they said, and I'm saying I never touched drugs unless I was out there working undercover.
Right, but Raymond, when you showed up in court and they're accusing you of this big time drug dealer role, did you realize at that point that what you were involved in was retaliation by your police department? Did that ever cross your mind, or were you in such shock that you just thought, I can't believe this?
I couldn't believe it. I didn't, to be honest, I didn't know where it was coming from, Miss Jane, to be honest with you. And I just felt like, you know what, this has to be retaliation against me because of the fact that I spoke out against these individuals who were doing wrong. So,
Right.
They felt like I didn't join in with them. So therefore, they had to try and muffle me or quiet me up, thinking that I was going to throw them under the bus.
And, when we talk about police officers crossing the thin blue line, when your case comes up, Raymond, doesn't that dissuade other police officers from doing the right thing because they saw this severe retaliation against you? I mean, what police officer with integrity would want to follow in your footsteps when you got such a horrific outcome?
Well, that's one of the things that I've said, Ms. Jane, is the fact that there are so many men and women who wears a uniform are reluctant to even come forth with any information that they see that's within these departments, and it's because of retaliation. Not only just me, but also the families and everybody else. It can become detrimental to you and your family. Ms. Jane, they sent me death threats. They left death threats on my phone, said that I'll be lying in my room in a pile of blood. So I called communication, and I spoke to a communication operator, and I told them about what happened. They dispatched a unit to my home, and of course, I called my attorney to inform him of the situation. It went nowhere.
So you're in court, you're in shock, and tell us what happened next in this progression through the justice system. You've got the feds involved. So tell us what happened.
So she proffered to the DA proffered to the court that she said he was in the top 10% of his department, but when he's not at work, he's into other curricular activity, going to various states to live in 350 kilograms of coke that was equivalent to $750 million. And the judge said, you're not a flight risk, because I didn't have a passport at the time. She said, but you're a menace to society.
Oh, that must have hurt.
I said, how could I?
Yeah, that must have really hurt, Raymond. I'm sorry. Every whistleblower suffers grievous injury and carries terrible wounds. And I'm sorry, Raymond. So what happened next?
So she said, I'm going to give you a no bond hold, and I'm going to detain you at the Federal Detention Center in Miami. And of course, the marshals came in, and they took me back to the holding cell where there was other guys that BSO had arrested. And I learned later, Miss Jane, that the Broward Sheriff Office had an investigation going on with them. And because of the fact that I blew the whistle on them, they tried to put me in connection with these guys who I used to work out with. And when I got back to the holding cell, I'm getting ready to tear all the head off their body, Miss Jane, because I've always had I don't have a temperament just to go out there and just jump on people, but my temperament was almost like my father, Miss Jane. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you,
Yes.
And them guys, I thought maybe they had said something, to get me in that situation, or I didn't know what was going on. And I looked at them, and they were like, come on, man, Big Hicks, you tripping, man. Why you want to jump on us? I was ready to fight with all of them, Miss Jane, because to be honest with you, I'm saying to myself, I was a highly decorated officer, man.
Yes.
I've never been in trouble in my entire life.
Yes. Raymond, I'm living this with you. I was in the same situation, highly decorated. I blew the whistle, and the retaliation was severe. It was immediate. So I understand what you're saying. I really do. And I grieve for you because I know how deep that pain goes. And I know the mistreatment is just awful. So tell us the end of this story concerning the Justice Department. What happened with these charges?
So of course, they take me, book me in, and they treated me like I was the lowest scum on the face of the earth.
Yes.
It's a certain way that you strip search an inmate, and how they treated me was just, it was just inhumane, you know.
Yes.
And of course, I said something to them. So they put me up in the shoe, on the 13th floor at the Federal Detention Center in Miami. And there I was, and the officer was jigging at me every single day. You
Yeah.
that effing cop, I hope you're going for the rest of your life, you know,
Yes.
and so forth. And it got to a point where I started doing like 1,000, 1,500 push-ups every other day, because now I'm conditioning my body and my mind, you know, because at some point I feel like I'm gonna have to go to war with these people, you know.
Yes.
And just the way they was treating me. And of course, I stayed there for almost 5 months, 23 hours a day, 1 hour a day for recreation. And it wasn't until as a captain, he pulled me out and he says, Ray, why are you threatening my staff? I said, I'm not threatening your staff, because I started pushing the emergency button inside the unit, because at this point, Ms. Jane, I'm ready to fight with all these people, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you know, every day they jigging at me, they saying things that's way out. I told them, I said, you guys are not professional, man. I said, I would never treat nobody the way that you guys treat me right now. I said, you shouldn't even be in uniform. And it was just always a back and forth. So of course, he called me to his office. They had me put my hand through the slot where you feed you, and they handcuffed me and shackled me, took me to his office. And that's when he asked me why was I threatening his officer. I said, I'm not threatening your officer. Your officer threatening me every single day. I said, and then on top of that, I hadn't talked to my wife and my kids. So of course he says, I'm gonna give you a phone call. So he allowed me to call my wife and speak with my wife and kids. You know, she didn't know what was going on. The kids didn't know what was going on. None of us knew what was going on. And of course, after that phone call, he says, Ray, the only way you're gonna be able to talk to your family, because there's so many days, you can talk to your lawyer, but family, you have to be down the general population. I told him, I said, I don't care where you put me. You know, you can put me wherever you want to put me. I'm gonna hold my own, man. And
but Raymond, tell us how this torture ended, because they're torturing you at this point. Tell us how this ended. How did you get out of jail?
Basically what happened was, they later placed me down in general population, which is a death threat to an officer. And of course, I went to try. I literally tried to beat this one guy to death, Miss Jane. You know, he saw my picture parade over the newscast saying, "You that effing cops! I hate effing cops." And of course, it wasn't until my wife went through her thrift savings, because the two court-appointed attorney was trying to force me to take time. I said, no, I'm not taking no time for something that I didn't do. I wouldn't even take time served. So they offered me 16 and a half months after being incarcerated for 11 and a half months. They said, you'll do 3 more months and go home. I said, no, I'm not taking nothing. I'm going to trial. So finally, my wife went through a thrift saving, and she got a former prosecutor, Michael Bloom, who had never lost a case in 15 years. And he said, Ray, if I've never seen an innocent man, you're one of them, and you shouldn't be here.
Right.
And that's when he decided to tell me that he was ready to go to trial, which is what I wanted to hear. And of course, when we go to trial on August 27th of 2001, we get the trial, and of course, the chief judge, Judge Norman C. Recker, who would give you 1 million years, he asked the DA, he says, where are the drugs? We have no drugs. He said, where are the money? We have no money. So he slammed the gavel. You know, he said, for sidebar, and he said, for impeachment purposes, you better come back in here with the same information that brought this young man here. Why is he here? So then they lied and said I was giving confidential law enforcement information, FCIC, NCIC. They found out that I wasn't running this information during this time, but in fact, it was the same deputy who arrested me, Miss Jane, because when they played the audio tape in court, that they said it was my voice on the tape, but it was my voice. It was the same gentleman who actually arrested me. And when the guys from Internal Affairs heard the testimony, they hurried up and jumped up and ran out of court. And I found out later that they called him down there, which is a tape that I sent to Miss Anna, right? That's one of the tapes. And if you look up missing documents turn up in deputy lawsuit, it's word for word verbatim who was on the tape. It wasn't me. It was actually him giving the information to my co-defendants, and they said it was me. It was not me. And the
So
jury,
they ginned up this case against you, Raymond. It
yes,
was all
ma'am.
ginned up. And the
Yes, ma'am.
jury decided in your favor, didn't they?
Yes, they did. As a matter of fact, they chose 11 whites, one black, and one black alternate, and all business people. And they deliberated and they came back with the not guilty verdict within 30 minutes.
It's a terrible misjustice, a terrible misjustice. But you did two things, didn't you? You wrote a book,
Yes, ma'am.
which I think is good because it helps you kind of tell your story with nobody interpreting it. And I believe you took action against the police department.
Yes, ma'am. Well, what I did is through the lawyer that I had, I come to find out, Ms. Jane, he was in bed with them because I found out he was a former police officer, which I didn't know. And of course, we filed for malicious prosecution, false arrest, imprisonment, a violation of my constitutional civil rights, supervision, retention, and destruction of evidence. And that case went nowhere. And all of a sudden, the harassment continued. The Broward Sheriff Office stormed my home a second time. On January 6th of 2004, they said I was shooting at someone in my backyard. At the time of the alleged shooting, my wife and I, we were in court. So there was a sergeant that lived down the street from me, and he said, what these people talking about? He said, I just saw Ray and Patrice in the elevator, who, so they had me there handcuffed about 6 hours in my backyard. So I told my wife, I said, show him the documents showing that you and I, we were in court. So when my wife presented the documents to him, within seconds, Ms. Jane, they dissipated. They were all gone within seconds.
Right. And, they just didn't want to let it go, did they, Raymond? They were not going to let it go. You were a whistleblower, and they were not going to let it go. So how did you beat back that one? Because now this is the second time they've come after you.
Yes, ma'am. So what happened was my wife presented the documents to this gentleman, must have been a lieutenant or captain, and within seconds they dissipated. They were all gone. And then later they sent me a letter in the mail saying that I discharged a firearm. So we take that case to trial in front of Honorable Stephen DeLuca in Deerfield. So Judge DeLuca said, where the victim? Mr. Hicks was shooting at. We don't have a victim. He said, did you do a ballistic test? No. Where the bullet casing? We don't have any bullet case. He said, so you mean to tell me you bring a highly decorated officer in my courtroom, one of your own, saying that he committed this heinous crime, and you have nothing to substantiate the charges? He said, well, we going to trial within the next 10 minutes. So I was tried by the court, and I was acquitted by the judge, ma'am.
It's welcome to the wonderful world of whistleblowing. Raymond, I do feel your pain. This is just excruciating. Did they take a third run at you?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell us about that one.
Yeah, so I began to fast and pray. And since I went through drill sergeant school many years ago, back in 1994, I was a drill sergeant for the Broward Sheriff Office. And I got a job working with misdirected kids, And of course, I helped 25 kids accomplish a high school diploma GED. I helped my mom at the age of 55 and my brother at the age of 32. And if you go to Google and you type in AfricanAmericanAchievers.com, you'll see me there in 2004, winning this prestigious award that's given to the Blacks who goes in the community to make a difference in their neighborhood. And of course, they came at me again.
Oh.
They stormed right after that award. The Broward Sheriff on October 10th of 2005, they stormed my home again. At this point, my son was there. He was 4 years of age, and my oldest daughter, she was 18.
And what were they saying this time, the third time?
Again, they came to the house and they said they had a warrant for my arrest. I said, what you mean a warrant for my arrest? Here we go again. I said, for what? And the sergeant was like, don't ask any question, just put your hand behind your back. So there was a guy say, Ray gonna need a double set of cuffs because I couldn't get my arms in back of me. And the sergeant, who was Caucasian, he said, man, F that. I told you to put the effing cuffs on him and you do what I tell you to do. So the two of them engaged in a verbal confrontation that literally almost led to a physical altercation, Miss Jane, because he kept telling the sergeant, how the man gonna get his arms behind his back when his shoulders too wide and he can't.
Yeah.
You need a double set of cuffs.
Yeah,
And of course,
our audience is going to have to see you on YouTube because you are a big man, Raymond, in more ways than one, but you are a big man. So what were they charging you with the third time?
they charged me with child abuse.
Child abuse.
Yes, ma'am.
And where did that come from?
When I get downtown, Miss Jane, right? They had 25 deputies standing in the Sally Port with black gloves on, waiting on me to come because the sergeant called down and said I was violent.
So what happened to that case? Did that go to trial?
Yes, ma'am. I was getting ready to take it to trial. The
Ugh.
prosecutor did a thorough investigation. She threw the case out, no pros.
Okay, that's 3 times. Did they try for a fourth or did they finally give up?
Well, back in 2013, I did a YouTube video where I spoke about the situation that we described now, trying to get someone to help me and my family, because
Yes.
at this point we're suffering, you know,
Yes.
financially and every aspect of life. So I go on YouTube and I begin to talk about all these things that happened to me and my family. And
Yes.
I made reference to Christopher Dorner. And I said, I don't condone the fact that Christopher Dorner went out there and took innocent people's lives. I said, but his department should have conducted a thorough investigation to determine whether or not what he said was true. Well, they took it like as to say that I was going to go out there, Miss Jane, and hurt innocent people.
Sure.
I would never do anything of that nature, Miss
No.
Jane. I was not raised like that.
Right.
You know, I was actually trying to get people to look into our situation. It's been 21 years, Miss Jane.
Yes. I believe it.
Fight.
Yes, I believe it. You are not alone among whistleblowers, Raymond. It takes almost, it seems like, forever. And here again, I feel your pain. I am dead serious. So at this point, now you're up to what year?
We're up to 2000, I think it was 13.
And when did you write your book, Raymond?
I wrote my book June 15th of 2015.
Right. And
that's when I published it.
And it's an excellent, excellent book. Tell us a little bit about your book, Raymond.
Well, one of the reasons why I wanted to write the book and I wanted to control every aspect about the material in the book is because I've heard and learned that sometimes people change certain information. So there was a lady, her name is Martha Moffett, and she resided out of New Jersey. I've never sat down and even spoke to her in person. I contacted her through a friend of hers. His name was Dick Copel. He was the one who actually did the drawing of the cover of the book.
Yes.
And he put me in contact with her. And she was a former editor of the National Enquirer, Miss Jane. Mm-hmm. And she said, Raymond, she said, forget about a bestseller book. This could possibly be a movie, you know, yes, if it gets in the hands of the right people. Yes. And she said, but what we want to do is we want to take appendix and put in the back of the book. And I said, okay. So what I did is I went and got my documents and everything. And in the back of the book, I put appendix to show that everything that I was saying was true, Miss Jane.
Yes, yes. Give us the name of your book. Be proud.
Yes, the name of the book is titled I'm Still Standing by Raymond Hicks.
I'm Still Standing. And yes, you know, that was a great name for your book because they put you through hell, Raymond. They put you through hell. Is it any wonder I think about our audience, and you know, I don't think they realize the high price that police whistleblowers, they're very few, and your case is the reason why. The brutality that's visited on police whistleblowers is just unconscionable. And you're a living example of it. And I hope they do make a movie out of your book because, you know, people wonder, well, why didn't those policemen say something? Why didn't somebody do something? Well, it's because of the things that happened to you, which police officers know about. And they say, do I want that to happen to me? So you have to have incredible integrity. And I salute you for that, Raymond. Your incredible integrity And I'm glad you wrote the book. And it details the suffering you've had to go through, which is immeasurable. The suffering, not only you, but your family.
Yes, ma'am.
Tell us about that.
My, we lost everything.
Yes.
We lost our home on December 22nd of 2011. We was given 24 hours to get out the door. And we had to give away all our furniture. And of course, our cars were repossessed. Our credit was depleted. We had no finances. I had to scrape up every nickel, quarter, dime, and penny just to put food on the table. And I began to, but I always remember my mother crying out to God, when there was chaos in our home. And I saw the manifestation, and I said, I began to pray about the situation. I said, Lord, you said in your word that you've never seen the righteous forsaken nor a seed begging bread. And I said, why are we suffering?
Yes.
And Ms. Jane, you may not believe this, but there was a young man. I went to the flea market to see if I could borrow a couple of dollars from some of my friends to try and put food on the table. And this guy who came through the system, he said, man, hey, Big Hicks, what's going on? I said, man, I'm hanging in there. And he said, you okay? I said, I'm hanging in there, man. He said, man, I remember I used to always pull us out and talk to us about doing the right thing, man. And he gave me three $100 of bills. And I went home and joined hands with my family. I thanked him. I went home and I joined my family. I said, you see what God would do when you trust him, And my wife and I, we went to Walmart. We bought groceries. And we bought enough groceries that we had like maybe $30 left over, Miss Jane, And I just said to myself, a lot of people don't know that it's.
I know it's very hard. Did anyone set up a GoFundMe for you, Raymond?
No, ma'am.
I'm surprised.
I did have some friends, a few co-workers, that tried to help me and my family. They were, I told them that I would give the money back. So eventually BSO gave me my back pay. This was like maybe 2003, I guess. It was, and everybody that I owed, by the time we paid off everything, Miss Jane, we really had nothing left over, So, but I thank God, that the Lord has been giving me the strength and the willpower, with the help of my family, God, and I'm striving each and every day to get better,
I do.
I've been working, doing security work, and I've been doing that now for the last, I don't know how many years now.
So is that how you're getting by, you and your family, as you're working security? And that's okay, that's taking care of your needs. It's never too late to have a GoFundMe, and I hope somebody out there establishes one for you. I'd certainly contribute. You've been through hell and back. Tell us how your book is going.
The book is doing well. Amazon is making a lot of money off of my book because I self-published the book through Amazon. I know they're making a ton of money because when I first put the book out, I was only charging $5.97, and when Ingram Publishing took over, they wanted Walmart online as well as Barnes and Noble online, to sell the book there. I had to increase the price to $14.99.
Yes.
And of course, I do get little royalties, but it's only like $20, $30. I don't know how much it is, Miss Jane, but it's not enough money that I get for the sale of the books.
Yeah, hold that book up one more time and give us the title again, Raymond.
Yes,
it's well worth reading. I'm Still Standing, and yes, you are. Got a lot of scars on you, though, Raymond, don't you?
Yes, ma'am. But one thing is for sure, I truly believe, Miss Jane, that God gives his biggest battles to his strongest warriors.
Yes. Yes, that's true.
And so that we can be a testament and a testimony to someone else. And I hope and pray that one day, God will afford me the opportunity to be able to, speak to other men and women in the uniform to let them know that, listen, when you take on the uniform, you take on the uniform to help people, not degrade or belittle people. Your job is, we're supposed to be the salt of the earth. We set the tone and the precedent for the people. Our job is to serve and protect. It's the taxpayers' money that keeps you with the job. And then on top of that, someone asked me about the George Chauvin situation. I said,
Yes.
it's a loss on both sides. They said, what do you mean, Ray? I said, because this gentleman lost 27 years on the department. His wife walked away from him. He lost everything. Now he's faced with, X amount of years in prison. Why? Because he made a wrong choice.
Yes,
I
he
said,
did.
and then on top of that, George Floyd family, they're going to suffer because of the fact that they'll never see their loved one again.
That's right.
It's just like those guys that just beat this guy in Memphis. I mean, it's you ask yourself, I couldn't have been there, Miss Jane, because I would have stopped him.
I know you would have. I know you would have.
Told him, listen, no, man, what are you doing? No,
I know you would.
Okay, he's already handcuffed. The buck stopped there. You're not doing anything else, man. This is over. He's handcuffed, and the fact of the matter is this: put him in the backseat of the cruiser, and if you can't do it, I'll do it.
That's
but
right.
at the end of the day, and this is the type of person that I am, Miss Jane. And one of the things that I pride in is that I finally was able to get my G license, my D, and my C, and I worked for a company called Carlson Associate out of Virginia, which was a bodyguard company. And I had an opportunity to work with Princess Fahada, who's the oldest daughter of King Abdullah from Saudi Arabia. And I traveled around the United States with them as one of the top bodyguards. My principal was Prince Faisal, and they believe in loyalty. And Ms. Jane, I can tell you right now that the whole entire family loved me. And
I have no doubt. I have no doubt, Raymond. I have no doubt. And, your police department, the trauma from being kicked out of your tribe, in this case, the police department, is one very few people will ever know, but it's painful, isn't it? Your identity, your career stolen from you. And
Yes.
It was so unfair. And that's why we have you on this program, Raymond, is your message is so important in this climate of police brutality, which is being seen. It's so important for other whistleblowers to see that you're still standing, that you still have your message, which is phenomenal. You're just a phenomenal person, Raymond.
Well, I thank God every day, and to this day, Ms. Jane, like I told my kids, I said, if you want to make your mom and I proud, I said, go to school, get a good education. All of my kids are graduated with honors. My wife, we've been married now for 37 years. We've been together for 39 years total. And my oldest daughter, she's a school teacher. My youngest daughter is a school teacher. My son, he's 20 years of age. He just got on with the United States Department of Homeland Security through TSA, and it's just such a blessing, and when I told my son, I said,
It's okay. It's okay. What did you tell your son?
I said, Junior, if you do well in Flaxseed, I said, be respectful. Yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. Yes, sir, no, sir. I said, read the SOP, Standard Operation Procedure, PMP, Policy and Procedure. And I said, son, listen, you're young. I went into the job with the expectation that I would retire one day and be able to take care of my family. I said, but if you want to go into law enforcement, go federal.
Yes.
Miss Jane, when he finished the academy, I told him if he did well, every week I ironed his clothes. You should see his uniform. His uniform looked like they could cut you. His boots look like you can see yourself in his boots, And this is a young man that have actually seen me, be drug out of my home at 4 years of age, But through it all, my kids are doing so well. My oldest daughter, she's getting ready to get her doctorate degree at Nova. And she got a master's She have a master's at Nova. She has a bachelor's from FAU, where she graduated with honors. And my youngest daughter, she's a school teacher. She inspired so many kids. She graduated with honors from Florida A&M University. You know, and it's just a blessing. You know, and it just shows that, as I said before, we've taken a negative situation and turned it into a positive.
Yes, you have. Yes, you have. Raymond, you're a hero and a warrior, and your children saw that. That's what we call whistleblowers, heroes and warriors. And you're one of those, Raymond. And I hope you join us. We're starting a campaign for making National Whistleblower Day permanent. You are a bona fide whistleblower of the highest sort. I hope you'll join us in that campaign because you are a hero and a warrior. And I give you thanks, Raymond, for standing up for what was right. I really do. We need more people like you in law enforcement, local, state, and federal. We need more people like you.
Yes, ma'am. Well,
thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Jane. You know, and I'll leave you with this thought.
Sure.
There's a gentleman by the name of Hugh Thompson. And Mr. Hugh Thompson was a lieutenant, I think, in the United States service way back in World War II. And there were so many people's lives were being taken. Innocent people's lives were being taken. And they call him, you know, a rat and everything else, you know, because he told his people, he said, if they take another life, we're going to turn our guns on them.
Yes.
And he wound up becoming a hero, you know. So to be honest with you, you know, I don't look at myself as a hero, Miss Jane. I just look at myself as a person who want the right thing for people, you know, and for them to understand that it's no matter where you come from in life, it's where you're going.
That's
and
right.
the thing about it is that, you know, I couldn't even read or write, Miss Jane, when I was 8 or 9. My dad dropped out in the 3rd grade. He couldn't read or write, couldn't spell his name. My mom dropped out in the 7th grade. You know, I couldn't read or write. But there was a teacher by the name of Miss Kirby. That's why I tell my daughters, you know, while you're a teacher, know that there's a lot of these kids that may come from the same type of home front that I came from. You would never know what goes on in a person's home until you get to know the kid, you know?
That's right.
And to be honest with you, I thank God for Miss Kirby. You know, she was a teacher who always inspired me. And you know what's amazing to me is that I was that kid getting D's and F's. But I can tell you, Miss Jane, I graduated with honors from American Country University. I graduated with a 3.97, ma'am. You know, and I just thank God, you know, for my kids, my mother, and you know, as I've said before, my family is my MVP.
Yes.
My mother, my kids, and my wife, you know, they're my MVP, you know, and I just thank God because, and I'm just hoping and praying that even when I leave this world, you know, I just hope and pray that my legacy will continue to grow and inspire other people to say, hey, you know, here was a man that went through nothing but turmoil for no apparent reason.
Yes.
You know?
And was retaliated against for doing the right thing. But we are not going to become strangers, Raymond. You are going to be incorporated into the whistleblower community. You already know Bobby Lodegar, and we're going to continue embracing you in the whistleblower community. You're a hero, you're a warrior, and I am so grateful to have met you and to be able to get your story out there because you're special.
Thank you, Miss Jane.
You're welcome. We'll be back in touch. No, thank you.
Yes,
appreciate it very much.
Thank you.